Hello and welcome back to Ancient Aliens in Modern Times. We're your hosts, Melanie Wild and
Stephanie Yelovich. Let's get into it.
Shall we? Today, okay, it's been a minute. We've taken a bit of a beat. We should address that between episodes here. I think we talked about it last episode too, but we apologize to our very loyal listeners who are anticipating episodes every week. But summer here in 2026 has been really beautiful and wonderful, and both Stephanie and I have been fully immersed and present in the here and now. And so, yeah, we've taken a bit of more time to not only live our lives, but also more time to research the information that we are presenting to you each and every episode. So this episode, Steph and I kind of both went into with very little understanding of this topic. So we definitely needed more time. But we want to talk about Hinduism and like the Vedic philosophies and the difference between those two things and how that kind of all correlates to everything we've been talking about in this Pantheon series so far. So yeah, before I get into it, Steph, do you want to just like give a like brief synopsis of what you're going to get into after I'm done my big spiel?
Sure, my pleasure. So, as Mel said, there was a lot of research that needed to go down because this is a very unfamiliar pantheon for me. But in doing that research, it's been kind of cool to realize not how much I do know, but how much I've heard of or been made aware of. And it was really nice to get a little bit more in depth within this information and just the breakdown of it. So what's been so fascinating for me and where I'm going to kind of take my part of the conversation is to talk a lot about the actual voice alchemy that these people were using as part of their early Vedic rituals. So chant, so Sanskrit chant, and specifically that of the Vedas, the Vedic texts. And I'm going to talk about why that was so important. The fact that they were using a literal sound technology, which we know is right up my alley. And as an opera singer, reading about this and discovering, like, being able to look at music from not a Western perspective is so incredible to me. So that's been really fun. And then there's some concepts that have come up from the Vedas, from the Rig Veda specifically, that I would love to break down because I think they're kind of cool. And one of which I will mention later, but has been brought up in other episodes. So that will be my contribution in a short while.
Beautiful. I'm excited to hear about all of the sound frequency and that technology.
Yeah.
That's existed for thousands of years. This like all predates biblical, this predates Egyptian, this predates Greek. This is all older. And what's very interesting is that a lot of this knowledge and wisdom that's been now recorded in physical texts was originally remembered and transferred from generation to generation through like the Norse verbal dialogue. So this was all stuff that was memorized by the sages and passed on from generation to generation through verbal language before it was written down. So that's another like something that we've come across in other pantheons is the importance of like talking to each other and like remembering this. And like it's honestly, it feels like a way to preserve knowledge that can't be lost, right?
Yes,
Because if it's
agreed.
preserved in the ether, in the memory of generation to generation, you can't destroy it. Whereas like if it's only preserved in written text and you don't memorize it, well, that's easily destroyed, right? Like the
Correct.
Library of Alexandria. So very interesting, thousands of years before any of the Abrahamic faiths rose, any of the Egyptian stuff, any of the Greek stuff rose, they were holding on to this wisdom and this knowledge through audio, which is not, and also like, because Steph's going to get into the importance of the frequency of sound that they held as well. So what's I'm going to like kind of go into giving you like a broader understanding of this quote unquote pantheon and like break it down a little bit to make it make a little bit of sense. Cause when I first got into it, I was like, this is so fucking confusing because there's so many different literature to read. There's so much stuff going on that it's like, well, what came first and where do we start here? So I will say that the Vedas, there's 4 of them. Those were written somewhere between 1500 BCE and 800 BCE. So about 1,000 years that these slowly came out. So the first one was the Rig Veda, and then the Sama Veda, and then the Yara Veda, and then the Athra Veda. And I may have not pronounced any of those correctly, but I did my best. And so I want to zoom in on the Rig Veda a little bit because that is the oldest. And the other thing that I want to mention is that throughout all of these, I guess we'll call them scriptures, God or the creator is referred to in many different names or forms. So God can be referred to as Brahma, Atman, Ishvara, Krishna, the supreme, and the divine. And it's not necessarily like they're interchangeable for God, but it generally means like our all creator. And so this God is presented in many different forms across the texts. Okay, so there's not one single book. There's not a single Bible. This is all a bunch of different things that kind of like stack on top of one another and like get into deeper more depth as you move and explore different things. So yeah, I'm just looking through my notes here. Now, or listened to the audiobook, the Bhagavad Gita, and it was honestly really, really beautiful and like a really, really cool story. So it's basically about this guy, a human, and his encounter with Krishna, who is witnessed as God, okay, the creator. And now in the Bhagavad Gita, it's the spiritual concepts of this. I think it was like an 8-hour listen. The audiobook is really, really cool because it's all about like humans' purpose, like what our purpose is as a human in this world and how to like make sense of like, why are we here? What is the point? Right. And so it's like he's just asking Krishna all of these different questions, and Krishna's telling him what to do with it. And so, to like really just like sum up like the main concepts of it is it's like you want to be in service as a human. Like your goal to reach God, to reach divinity, to become a part of the all is to let go of the detachment from outcome, and be present in how you're serving your community. And so it's not like, oh, well, I want all of this money. And once I have all of this money, I'm going to do this, this, and that. It's like, who are you before that happens? Right. And so if you're going to do all of these things once you have this outcome that you desire, you should just detach from that outcome. And the desire can still be there, but it's like, I'm just going to show up in service anyway. And then what will be, and finding gratitude in what you have now and not what you want then. So like overall, like it's a really beautiful text to like, I don't know, just come into a sense of self. Now there's some stuff in there that's also really strange.
I'm sure.
And so, everything is like take it with a grain of salt. And like when Krishna like physically appears, he's terrifying. And we've seen this before in other cultures is, when God appears, you can't look at him because he's so scary, and that staring at him will burn your eyes out. And so it's like very similar where it's like oh my God, like if you look at this guy, it will kill you just to look at him, is how it's
Hmm.
described.
It's
And
like
so it's
Medusa.
like, oh, okay. We've seen this before where God you can't look at. So I'm like, what is this about across culture is that when they do describe God in physical form, looking at God is going to kill you. Like, what? Like, how
Interesting.
is this something like is this because the force is, like, so powerful? Like, like, you can't stare at the sun for too long because it hurts? L
It even makes me think too, like if a robot figures out a robot, it self-destructs. But it's like, aren't we emanations of God? So is it
Yeah,
almost like the idea of like turning the mirror back at a person, like in a symbolic way, where it's like when you discover that it's actually you, like it all kind of the computer
right.
program like destructs or, you know, it's like and it's interesting because when you described the story, it made me think of The Alchemist. Like,
Yes.
where that young boy encounters that alchemist, right? Like, I find it so
Yeah.
funny that it's like and the way that we personify God in our spiritual texts so that humans can, like, actually comprehend the idea, right? But, yeah, the idea of that, like, mirror, like, it is terrifying to look at yourself, is it not?
Yeah, especially if you've taken some psilocybin.
Yeah, or Soma, like I'm sure you're gonna talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about Soma too, like, it's just yeah, I really like that. That's a really interesting way to look at it because
Mm.
it is that, like and, in the Vedic philosophies, it's like it talks about, like, cycles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and not just cycles, but, like, things that exist in the macro exist in the micro. Like, it's like
Mhm.
that same concept that, like, all is one, all is all. So,
Yes, that makes
like, that
sense.
would make sense that if it's like, okay, well, if we're looking at Krishna and Krishna's terrifying and just to look at him will burn your eyes out of your face. And if you look at God, like, like same thing, like and like
Yep.
even when like last episode when we were talking about Thouth the Atlantean and when he went down into the dweller and you couldn't look at the
Yes.
dweller either. And so it was
Yeah.
like it's like the same concept, but perhaps that is true that it's like to look at God is to look at self and to see God within self to see God outside of self is to see self. It would be that would make
Mhm.
sense because
It's
we are
trippy.
like, we are all literally made of that
Yeah.
same
And
divinity.
I love then turning it back to what you mentioned about the idea of, like, we're here to serve, like, acts of service, right? Because what
Yeah.
does that do but that makes us all equal, right? As
Yes.
emanations of that source, it's like we are all here to serve whether you are a king or you are a beggar, you know?
Yes. And so it's not like it's not just service too, but it's like you serve and then you release attachment to the outcome of your service, right? Because
Mhm.
in like modern day, our version of service is I'm going to do this so that I can get that,
Mm. Bingo.
right? And
That's true.
so in the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about, no, I'm going to do this, and then whatever God will give me, I will be received. Like I will be
Mm.
glad.
Beautiful.
Right? So it's
Yeah.
like it's not about, like, going after what you want as an
Mm.
individual, but it's about surrendering whatever future vision that you have for yourself and saying, "Whatever God gives me is what I need, and I will graciously accept it."
Mm. Which is really driving home that idea of from gratitude,
Mhm.
spawns abundance. But
Yeah.
it's just that releasing of the outcome, yeah, which I would say can be very challenging.
Yeah, well, it, like, kind of like the whole, like, new age manifestation fucking crew of people, that
Yep.
I was, like, very wound up in.
Oh, me too.
Um, yeah, I was, like, making vision boards. It's like it totally, like, goes against all of that, and, like, so I can see how, like, religions would call that new age movement demonic or whatever you wanna call it,
Mhm.
like, because it's like it does go against, like, surrendering. And it's like
Sure.
it's not like this life isn't about you. It's not about me. It's not about what I
Okay.
want or what I perceive will make me happy. It's about what I need, not what I want.
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
is. And so
True.
God is going to give me what I need to learn and grow and to become humble in who I am. And like
Yeah.
perhaps that is what it is like God is the ultimate form of humility.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
So it's what else are my notes in the Bhagavad Gita here? The one da, 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 da. Okay, yeah. That's kind of, the
Can I
quick.
ask
Yeah.
a question actually? Because I know there's one concept that I feel like probably, I think, comes from the Vedic teachings, and maybe this is just coming from many places, but the idea of presence in being here now, which you kind of
Mm,
mentioned also,
yeah.
like the lack of obsession with the past and the future. There's a lot of talk, if I'm not wrong, about being present in your
Yes.
community now. Yeah.
So it is there's like he talks about meditation. Krishna talks about meditation a lot and
Mhm.
like emptying your mind.
Mhm.
And because like that's where the physical stuff starts first in the mind, right? Like
Sure. Yeah.
what you think you become or you create. And so
Mhm.
it's like it's about controlling your mind before anything else. And so
Okay.
in order to like know what God wants for you or what you need to grow, you have to empty out your desires. You have to empty
Sure.
out your thoughts. And so there's a
Sure.
lot of emphasis on sitting in silence
Mm.
and not a guided meditation, right?
Sitting in
Like,
silence, literally.
just, like, can you clear your mind? Can
Yeah,
there's huge emphasis on meditation and meditation being the emptying of thoughts.
that makes sense. And
Yeah.
and do they consider, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, do the ancient Vedic principles consider, like, the mind what sits in our head, like our brain, or do they consider the heart the mind, like the Egyptians do?
I I'm not sure
Okay, yeah.
definitively the answer to where it sits, but I know it's not the
Mhm.
heart. The
Okay,
heart
okay.
the heart is described as the life force.
Okay, yeah,
So I don't
which
know
also
that
makes
that would
sense.
be the same as the mind
Sure, yep,
and the thoughts because, yeah, the heart is definitely the prana that they
yeah,
call
okay,
prana, life force.
okay,
Yeah,
great, okay, thank you.
yeah. So Egyptians consider the mind and the heart?
Remember when we were talking too about, like, heart coherence and the fact that, like, based on Ma'at and that kind of idea of cosmic order, which the Vedic teaching also carries a very similar teaching, it's just called something different. It's called Rita,
Mhm.
but it was the idea that the heart was the mind, that the heart was smarter than the actual physical brain. So
Oh,
that's where
okay.
I'm wondering, like, and how it was perceived visually, like, the idea that they would weigh the heart against the feather, right? Which was like to define whether or not you were of pure heart or of like carrying ma'at to enter into the afterlife.
Right.
Like, is there, because again, they do like I could even talk a little bit about that now, is that idea of Rita, which was the idea of cosmic order. So, like, the universe is conceived as functioning according to an underlying order, right? We know that. We see that
Yeah.
in many of the different teachings. And in the Vedic teaching, it's the ritual recitation which kind of participates in that order by reproducing the sacred utterance correctly. So, like, I'm going to get into that in detail, but it's this idea of, like, again, there's a way, like, the river flows, the sun rises, the sun sets. Like, it's the things that
Cycle.
are yeah, that are tangible and also decreed by nature, which is what a lot
Right.
of, like, based on what you've shared with me already, not yet on the podcast, but the fact that a lot of these gods and goddesses were connected to elements again, right? Like this
Yes.
cosmic order idea based in the way that nature functions.
Yeah. And so in the Rig Veda,
Mhm.
which is the first one, the oldest one,
Yeah,
and Veda, I should also say Veda means knowledge.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize.
So in the Rig Veda, the oldest one, it mentions 33. There are 33 gods.
Interesting
And
number.
so there's 11 gods in heaven, 11 gods on earth, and then 11 gods in the waters. So that's really interesting. If, you're conspiracy minded, the number 33 comes up in Freemasonry as well.
Mhm.
So, yeah, also interesting. And so, like, and everything like in the Bhagavad Gita too, when it talks about the different gods and like when Krishna is explaining the gods and like what to do with them, like it's almost like what you said is the gods are nature. Like it's like
Mhm.
they've personified the elements of nature,
For sure.
which is that cosmic order is like what
Yep.
you know to be true. Like the grass, you put water on, the god water onto the grass, it will grow, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like these things are known to be true. You put a sperm and an egg together, you will create life. These things we know to be true.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's very much like the Egyptian stuff too, where it's nature personified into gods.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
I was reading, and I didn't honestly research a lot of the gods and goddesses, but I did notice that Varuna was one that
Mhm.
was listed as being, like, the guy that he's responsible for maintaining Rita, or, like, the cosmic order in the early Rig Veda. I
Right.
noted that he was sung quite a bit, like, a lot. They talked about him, almost like a cosmic sovereign. I love that term.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a guardian of reality's integrity.
Yeah. Well,
Which
so which
again,
one is he?
this is Varuna.
Varuna.
Varuna is who I was reading about. But again, the representation of that moral law, not
Right.
necessarily an actual guy, but yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm not wrong, he also was just depicted as like scary. He was pretty like
Yeah.
spooky. Yeah.
And like so the other ones that's like really huge is Agni, which is
Yes.
fire.
Mm.
And, like, to them, fire was life. Like, everything existed
Yes.
within fire and because of fire. And there's a huge emphasis on, ritual sacrifice, and
Mm.
not necessarily sacrifice of, like, life, but
Mhm.
sacrifice of, like, goods. So it's
Mhm.
like you would have, like, a sacrificial fire, and, like,
Yep.
at present at all of these sacrifices is Soma. And I talked about Soma briefly in our ayahuasca and plant medicine podcast episode before we started this Pantheon series.
Mhm.
And so Soma is a mind altering substance or drink, but it's also a god, a deity.
Hmm.
So there's like an entire book in the Vedas just dedicated to Soma. Like,
Wow.
Soma is so, so present at all of these rituals and sacrifices. Soma is always present, and, like, they would have sacrifices multiple times a day where they, like, build a
Wow.
fire, and then they give the god that they're sacrificing to eggs or grains or
Interesting.
clothing or, like, a variety of different things, and it's not human sacrifice. I didn't come
Mhm.
across human sacrifice in this.
That's good.
We'll get into that next week on
Yeah,
Mesoamerica.
right. Well, I feel like they really ran with that, like, literally what's coming to my brain for the other millennials and those who have watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It's like it's a whole, like, everything you're describing, Mel, it's like like Hollywood took it and wrapped it up into a very silly film where Indiana Jones enters this, like, temple and they're praying to, like, Kali Ma, and it's this crazy sacrifice, but it is a human sacrifice. So again, we
Mm.
can see how things are stolen from these beautiful pantheons and then wrapped up in some weird bundle and sold by Hollywood as
Like,
entertainment.
just because I didn't come across it, though, doesn't mean it's not there.
That's true, that's true. And I
Now I
think,
wanna,
like,
like, find out.
you're so
I didn't
funny,
ask the
but you
question.
hit on something important in that the ritual, right, which they performed involving fire, which was really huge, and again, the idea that, like, fire was considered life. We know fire is very active, it burns, it
Yes.
moves, it's constantly changing. I would say it's a very good example, and what was tied in with that in those rituals was not only like a recitation, but an actual chant or like singing of these Vedas. So what's kind
Yes.
of cool is the Vedas, you can listen to them, that's fine, but they're actually meant to be experienced through chant and song. So
Yes.
to read them is one thing, but to hear the actual like sound technology and why they were done this way also really mattered as part of their rituals. And I didn't know this, but the Vedic chanting is actually a UNESCO protected thing. So it's like it's known in the world as one of the oldest forms of technology, and it's protected as such. So I found that to be kind of cool that it was like had that stamp on it.
Well, it's just like comes back to frequency, right? Like chanting is
Oh God, yeah.
frequency, right? So like they're
Absolutely.
using through voice chant,
Yep. Yep.
they're initiating a frequency
Yes.
into their immediate world that's going to affect the physical world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want me to elaborate a little bit
Yeah,
on
I
that
do. Might
now
as
or
well. We're
okay.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, we're here.
I can come back to the other stuff.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm sure some of the stuff that I'll mention will bring you back into that stuff, but so you've already kind of said this, that there were 4 different Vedas, and what I did research was that they were not originally books, but an oral tradition first.
Yep.
So kind of cool, like the early Reiki training, they were transmitted from teacher to student through precise memorization and recitation. So this wouldn't have been like, here's your songbook, go study and practice, and then we're going to come back and work on it together. This would have like, I observed a really cool documentary that you can find online, and it was showing how the teachers, and they called them a disciple and master. So it was master and disciple. And interesting they use that word, but it was specifically for how the sound was taught. They actually showed, first of all, it's generational, like you mentioned. So young boys, young women would be taught this by an elder. Were not just taught through the actual physical singing. There was actual like mantras and mudras that were also associated, and the actual student was like kind of moved around and manipulated by their teacher because this hammered in. This was like a mnemonic way of like hammering this into the body. So they used actual patterns and physical movement to help the chant be memorized.
Hmm.
So so it was really specific because it was about precise pronunciation, pitch, rhythm, and sequence. So and they call it a technology, which I really love. And so like if you think about it this way, what if sacred language wasn't primarily about communicating information to God, but about producing a particular sacred act through sound? So, like, think of that, right? Which is really a lot closer to the concept of mantra, right? So then on top
Yes.
of that, they had a Vedic accent, and I say that with my fingies in quotations here. So there were 3 kind of main, like, accents they talk about. And so for those of you who are musicians who are listening or you've studied music, there was something called udatta, which was the raised or primary tone. It technically is supposed to mean high, but it may not be visibly marked that way. So the way that even the words were marked would kind of tell you if you went up, down, or you created something called a svarita,
So it's
which
like
was
it's singing.
it's singing, and it was the way they notated it was very different. Like in Western music, everything is notated on a staff. There's little dots and lines, and you follow those. You know which ones, denote certain rhythms. We have things called key signatures that tell you what key you're in. Like there's a whole map, right? It's a whole system. So they had their own version of that, but we write it nowadays, but it was all done physically, right? So that's why I think the movement was a super important part of that, because it helped them kind of hammer in the sound into their
Right.
actual physical body.
Yeah.
And then the big part of it too was patterns. So the tradition developed lots of different methods of recitation to prevent corruption of the text. So again, the oral tradition was preserved precisely so that it didn't kind of mess up what they were actually memorizing. And I think it's important to note that there wasn't only one way to recite a Vedic passage. There were different patterns, and the patterns denoted how the words were repeated in what sequence. So you'll notice like this is a really, maybe not the best example, but there's a musical Hair, right? Where they sing the Hare Krishna. So they go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So they're singing the same words, but they're playing around with the order of the words and why that order makes that particular passage specific, and why it's sung that way. So I love this kind of comparison here, where realizing the fact that the Vedic tradition wasn't meant merely to preserve what the words said, but it was preserving the correct order of the sound itself. So if we think of like Rita, which is cosmic order, then we look at Vedic recitation, that's like the sonic order. So it's the way of preserving the cosmic order, but through sound.
Right.
It's like, this is like mind-blowing to me when I think about it this way. So let's see. I have so many notes too. What it makes me think of is like in school, and so in the Western world, we look at Gregorian chant. So in my training in music history, we looked at like the earliest place where music was written down. And I giggle because they talk about Gregorian chant being that. And again, it's the dots with the lines and the up and the down, and it tells you where to go and what key. We even write psalms that way in church. If you've ever been a singer in church, in the Catholic Church even, there's a way of writing it so you know when to go up, when to go down, when to go all around. And here it's the same, but it's not. So what's kind of interesting too is looking at kind of like a Vedic ritual. So these were called yaina. And so it wasn't necessarily like a priest standing in front of an idol or a temple and reciting something. So think of it being like the fire, which we talked about. We make an offering to the fire. Then a mantra is sung or recited, which activates and brings forward the sacred deity, which in turn represents cosmic order. So if you think about the ritual in that way, it's a way, like the sound is a way of like making the deity come alive.
It's
in
activating it, yeah.
Exactly, and activating
Yeah.
it. So like Agni is talked about a lot in the Rig Veda, excuse me. I'm just making up words now. So he's not merely the fire god, but functions as a mediator between humans and the gods. So the sacrifice is offered to the fire, and Agni carries that offering to the divine realm through the element. So human sound.
That God exists in so many other pantheons, the messenger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're using the element as the messenger to support you, right? Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's shifted later. Like, so in the early Vedic tradition, right, you'd have the fire, you'd have the ritual, you'd have the priests, you'd have the offerings, you'd have the mantra. Later in Hindu tradition, you have the devotional worship, you have the deity images. So we see a lot of this, right? In the Hindu teachings, there's these beautiful depictions of like Krishna and Ganesh and all of these different gods and goddesses that are often depicted as humans or animal humans, which is another interesting parallel we've seen in other pantheons.
I listened to that story about the elephant guy,
Ganesh, yes.
Yeah, he like lost his head, and then they put on an elephant head to replace his head after his dad killed him.
Interesting, right?
It reminded me a lot of like the Norse stuff when I was listening to some of these myths. I was like, this stuff is like so fucking weird.
Isn't that interesting? I know.
But yeah, that's where he got his elephant head, is that his dad killed him, beheaded him, and then his mom was like, no, like a mom would.
Right.
And
Poor
then
Ganesh.
they like went and found an elephant and replaced his head with an elephant head.
Wow. Well, would
and he
you
came
look
back
at
to life.
that? Yeah. So we have that image, right? In the Hindu teachings, then comes the temples. So the temples weren't as important in the Vedic tradition. Like that more came later. And then something called puja, which it's kind of cool because I actually know a gal she's an Indian gal that I know named Puja. which is
So
like offerings. It means like offerings or ritual. And then they would have like the Sanskrit mantras, and then they would have later tantric rituals. So tantra was kind of I know it shows up in many different cultures and many different forms, but that kind of came later, talking about that,
yeah.
like you were saying about the yogic traditions. So later, the temple becomes a sacred environment, but that wasn't as important in the Vedic teaching. So then I kind of have some cool concepts to mention, but I don't know if I should wait so you can get into the.
No, you might as well go because, like, I'm gonna come
Sure.
back and I'm gonna come into the flood story. So you're on a
Okay.
roll.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So looking at these two concepts. So puja, which I mentioned, the ritual act of worship, offerings, flowers, incense, food, lamps, water, mantra, gestures, etc. And then there's this concept that was mentioned in our early episodes when we were talking about Reiki, why I was really adamant about the fact that Reiki is important in person, or attunement is important in person. So darshan specifically means something along the lines of being seen or being seen by the deity.
Mm.
So again, spoke about this concept earlier in those episodes, and it's even also representational of being seen by the teacher or witnessing the light through the teacher. So again, connecting to God through someone who's been initiated to carry those teachings forward. That doesn't mean they're a god or a goddess themselves, but it means that they are a portal, we'll just say. So a big part of this concept is the witnessing through sight. So that's why in the later Hindu traditions, why they often have the eyes of the gods or goddess are very, very prominent. And you'll see eyes quite a bit as a
Right.
representation. So this really is about the reciprocal encounter between the worshiper and the divine, which I think is really beautiful, because we have a lot of this idea of like, I see this idol, I send words to this idol, but it's the actual being seen that for me is
Mm.
important, right? So yes, it makes the act of looking itself to be spiritually transformative, but the reciprocal act of being seen back by God or by the deity. So in Western tradition, we imagine ancient religious worship as a person or a god. And you make an offering, you say a prayer, and you ask for something, and hopefully God responds, right? Whereas darshan suggests something more relational. So the worshiper presents themselves before the divine presence, and the divine presence is encountered through sight. This is why, as I mentioned, eyes are super important in later Hindu imagery, and it parallels with the Vedic emphasis on vision and revelation. So there were these people called the rishis, and these were traditionally understood. So we talked about this in the Celtic tradition, the storytellers, same in
Yeah.
the Nordic
The
tradition.
sages.
This exactly. And so
Yeah.
these were the people who not invented or intellectually composed the Vedic hymns, but they were seen as seers who
Hmm.
perceived reality. And so the word rishi is connected with seeing, perception, and traditional interpretation. So the nature of seeing changes, but the underlying idea of perceiving something sacred that is kind of most of the time hidden remains really important. So again, the fact that this sound as a technology is not only being performed or sung by the person, it's being experienced and received by that same person at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty powerful.
It really is.
And there's more. Like I could go on, but I just feel like when you think of like, even when I sing opera, like so many people will come to hear this and they are so moved. They don't understand what the heck I'm saying. Like if there's no translation above me, they're being moved to tears, not by, oh, she said, I love you a bazillion times. It's because of what the sound did to
It's
their
the
physical body.
frequency.
And the
Totally.
frequency of how it made them feel. Like, a lot of people say that they have a religious experience when they go to hear opera or when they go to hear classical music, and I
Yeah.
understand why. It's not just
Yeah.
because it's pretty, right?
Well, like, any sort of music too will affect the way that's why, like, I can't watch like, I could watch a horror movie or thriller movie on mute and not be
Yep.
afraid. I could watch
Totally.
everything, but as soon as you put
Yes.
that creepy soundtrack in,
Yep.
I don't even have to see it, and I'm scared.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and that's why, like, people who create those films, they know how to manipulate music and silence. That's the key thing. Alfred Hitchcock figured this out because he knew that if he manipulated where it was silent and where it was not, and of course, when you startle someone, like, I
Yep.
still remember that scene in the movie Psycho where he walks up the stairs and it's completely silent and you're just waiting, and then all of a sudden it's like something like this really loud sound happens. And then and then you're jumping in your seat, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing how frequency can move us. But in saying that, this is why the Vedas are so important to experience them through sound. Like, I even sent Mel an email and I was like, "You have to listen to them." I was like, "You can listen to
On
what they
YouTube,
say all
yeah.
you want, but you have to it becomes like it's trance-like almost. And it's so
Yeah.
simple the way they're singing. They're not, like, they're not operatic, they don't have a lot of, like, color going on. It's really
It's like
about, like,
anybody could do it.
yeah, but it's, like, the ups and downs and all arounds and when to make those changes that makes it sacred.
Right.
So, it's just fascinating to me, and yeah, and that's why the tradition itself is kinda going away because the youth are not being encouraged to learn it. We're going away from the idea of the master and the apprentice, we're doing a
Mhm.
lot of, like, "Let's read it in a book," and that's fine, but you can't learn this from a book. You
Yeah.
know? So,
Well,
I hope
I
that
mean,
there are
like
those preserving it.
yeah. And anyway, yeah, no, I think it's really interesting the frequency stuff coming up because I think that a lot of that transfers across many cultures and
Mhm.
song. And so and like even in like modern day when you like looked at conspiracy stuff and like frequency in
Oh,
Hollywood-esque
yeah.
music, right? And how
Mhm.
they shifted the frequency just slightly out of the heart
You
chakra.
got it.
Yeah, to cause anxiety. And you don't even
Yep,
like you don't know when you're listening that that's what's happening, but
for
it's
sure.
affecting you on a cellular level.
Yes,
Yeah. And
and
like
you
even every single time that they've set up they've shifted from like 1G to 2G to 3G to 4G
yeah,
to 5G, every single
yep,
time a rollout of these frequencies that like because that's what they are, like, it's a radio like,
yes.
you could, like, understand, like, a radio frequency, right? When you connect to the right frequency, you connect to one another across space, right?
Mhm,
And so,
mhm.
like, the same frequency happens on our cell phones, right? Our cell
Exactly.
phones are connecting to
Yep.
this frequency. Now, this frequency, though we can't see it, our bodies, our cells feel it. And so every single rollout of a new 4G, 5G, what I don't know what the G stands for,
I have no idea,
there is a
honestly.
wave of sickness that comes.
Yes.
So it's like I think when it was like 3G, it was like the swine flu came out at the
Mhm.
same time that that 3G rolled out. And then when 4G rolled out, there was what was the next one? There was another one. And then
I've lost track of the bullshit.
5G was COVID.
Yep,
Right? As soon as they
yep.
rolled up to 5G, and now they're just getting ready to roll out 6G, so there's gonna be another wave of sickness across society that is influenced by this frequency, this wave on a cellular level. It's affecting all of us, so, we can fight that with good frequency, right?
Absolutely.
And that like,
It's just
perhaps that's what these
awareness.
chants are, right?
Exactly, and so it's like these powers that should not be are messing with the cosmic structure through
Yes,
frequency,
through
and it's like
frequency,
if we become aware of that, then we can keep those frequencies, circulating in our homes, the good ones, I mean,
the good ones.
and which is why the specificity of this why they were so adamant about the specificity. It wasn't just some pretty stuff and because they were singing about their favorite gods, it was like a literal system.
Yeah.
And we
So,
can keep
better
that
yourself.
system preserved. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, even just, like, you can find them all on YouTube, friends. Have a listen. You don't
Yeah.
need to know what they're saying, you know?
Yeah, and, like, even if you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna go into, like, the Hindu and Vedic stuff," like, you can find different frequencies through, like, binaural
Absolutely.
beats too,
Yeah.
and they all like, it's an easy Google search to be like, "What frequency do I need
And
for
don't
this ailment?"
underestimate the frequency of your own voice, right? Like just by using your
Beautiful.
own voice and humming and toning and like I literally teach a course on it where it's not challenging. Anybody can do it. And your own voice is your own savior. Like literally in the way of toning and frequency. Yes, talking, sure, but that takes the guesswork out of it. You don't need to have meaning behind it.
What's your
Just
course called?
so my course is called the Voice Alchemist Activation Course, and I'm actually going to be teaching one online starting in the fall, and anybody can do it. It's for singers and non-singers. You do not need to be a singer. That's not the point. And it's simple. Simple teachings for, easy use.
So why would I sign up for it?
Ooh, I like this. Mel is my marketing consultant, everyone. Well, I would say that the throat chakra is the most attacked of all of the chakras that exist on this planet. And so by using your voice in different medicinal capacities, we'll say, the voice is literally a self-massager. So to have a tool that you literally have built into you that you can use daily no matter what, as long as you breathe air and you have breath to breathe. That doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. As long as you are breathing, you are able to do this, and anybody can do this. So I think having those tools to combat the weird frequencies that are out there and that are, not to sound doom and gloom, it's just, the opposite of fear is preparation. Just have a tool to support you. And
So this will help my my health and my
your health and your nervous system, your connection to self, your awareness of your voice usage, also clearing blockages from this lifetime and other lifetimes. Right? So
Right.
we've been quite shut down, not just women, but especially women. And this I feel like it's a big life changer. Also, if you're a healer and you're already an energy worker and you want to bring sound into your treatments, that's another reason to
Right.
study this and to
Who's your typical demographic that comes to this?
Oh, I have actually so many, and I find I'll hone in on that, but I find that the people that come in each version of the course are always dealing with a similar thing. So I've had a cohort that was women in their 40s and 50s who had been shut down vocally since they were young and not able to say no. That was the big theme of that group.
Mhm.
I've had a group of 12 healers, all who want to bring sound into their practice. And so we did a focus on that. Also, a big, this is Atlantean technology. So this is an ancient remembering as well. So if you are feeling called to or connected to Atlantis, because we know everything goes back to Atlantis on this podcast,
I'm going to bring it back.
It's for you. I've had a group of people as well who just, they wanted to explore and expand their spiritual connection to self. And they ended up wanting to do it through their voice. So, yeah. So it really, I've really worked with people of all types, and it works for everybody.
Beautiful.
Thanks for letting me plug my course, Mel. I love you. All right, let's get into
Okay, so speaking of Atlantis, and everything coming back to Atlantis, I would like
I love you.
to bring it on back. So
Yeah, girl.
what do you know? In my research on the Veda and Hinduism, I came across a flood story.
Well, what do you know?
What do you know? So in chronological order, the third out of the four Vedas, so the Yara Veda, within there is the Satopatha Brahmana, and this is the flood story. So to put it into Cole's notes, I will tell you briefly about this flood story. So this starts with this person named Manu, and he is washing his hands. Okay. And then as he's washing his hands, a tiny fish appears into his hands. And the fish asks Manu to protect it because larger fish will eat it. So what he's saying is, save me now and I will save you later. He says, I'll protect you if you protect me. So
Wow.
Manu protects the fish, and then it grows, and he has to move it into increasingly larger bodies of water. Eventually, the fish becomes enormous, and then once the fish is massive and safe from predators, the fish tells Manu, a flood is coming that will destroy the creatures. You must prepare a ship.
Mm.
So when the flood arrives, Manu gets into his ship, and then the fish returns in this ocean, and he has a horn. And so Manu ties the boat to the fish's horn, and the fish pulls him through the waters towards a northern mountain. We've heard this.
We have heard this, haven't we?
We've heard this. So he takes refuge on the mountaintop, and then eventually the waters recede, and Manu alone remains. Now, so in other stories, he has a wife or he meets a wife. So in this story, he doesn't have a wife yet, but it goes on, and he creates a daughter wife, which is weird. Lots of
This
weird
must have
things
been written by men.
lots of weird things. So anyway, well, in later stories, because this is one of the older ones, they build on it and elaborate more, and assign more things to it. But where he then is told that he has to bring seeds onto the boat or the ship. And the other things that I find really interesting is that it is a fish that is presented to him.
Yeah.
And the symbology of the fish is in Sumeria is Enki or Ea. And if you look at the Pope and his head, his hat thing,
Oh,
I don't know what his
yeah.
hat is called, the Pope's hat, it's like if you look at it from the side, it's literally a fish with its mouth open at the top.
Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's a fish. So, and then Yeshua, or sorry, not Yeshua, but Jesus, who is actually Yeshua, but the newer version of Yeshua, who's been manipulated into this figure Jesus, there's a Jesus fish.
Of course, yeah.
So there's this symbology of this fish being the savior.
And also Jonah in the whale. Do you know that story? The
No.
Bible story? So Jonah is saved by this whale, and he lives in the whale's belly. And
That
he
one.
the whale swallows him not to eat him, but so that he can survive. I honestly could not tell you where this is from in the Bible, but this is a story
So
that I
I've
remember growing
kinda
up with, and, the whale being the savior, the fish, I think, a very big
yeah,
fish, but
yeah, big fish.
and then he blows him out his spout later when
Yeah,
everything is huh. I
that's
forgot
right.
about that one actually until you just explained it like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's this symbology of the fish, and so I think that's
Mm.
really interesting to note in this story, but what's, wild is,
Yeah.
okay, literally brought to a mountain,
A
okay?
primordial mound.
So, the similarities, Manu, he's warned by a fish, there's a boat, there's a flood, there's a mountain, there's survival, and then in Noah, in
Yep.
Genesis in the Bible, he's warned
Mhm.
by God to build the
Mhm.
ark in advance. The family and animals are preserved, then there's the flood, and then the ark eventually rests on a mountain.
Hmm.
And then in Samaria with Gilgamesh, so he's warned before a divine and we'll get to this, we haven't gone to this yet, but this will come up in not next episode, but the one after. He's Gilgamesh is warned before that there's going to be a flood, builds a vessel,
Okay.
life is preserved aboard it, the flood destroys humanity, the waters subside, and same story. And then
Hmm.
in Greek, the Deucalion, so there's Zeus or Jupiter sends the flood. Deucalion and his wife, Pyrrha,
Yeah.
survive in the small vessel. Then they reach Mount Parnassus. I can't remember how to say that.
Parnassus.
Parnassus. And then humanity is renewed after. So
Wow. And
and then the
yeah.
Egyptians, they start their creation story
Yeah, rising from the
after the flood,
primordial waters.
rising from the waters.
Wow. And you know what? It's funny because that god that I brought up from before that's mentioned in the Vedas, Varuna, he actually later in the teachings is associated with the celestial waters. So I'm just
Right.
reading notes that I forgot about. So his association with water becomes increasingly prominent later in Hindu tradition. So as the stories were added to, and water is super significant because it participates in the cosmic structure, right? We know you mentioned the 33, 11 of them being in the water.
11, 11, 11.
And 11, 11, 11. And the Vedic people, I'm just seeing what I have here about him. Yeah, so Varuna, who was connected to Rita, which was the idea of cosmic order, was one of the great divine guardians of that order. So to live truthfully, perform ritual correctly, honor one's relationships, and participate in the rhythms of nature were all ways of remaining aligned with the cosmic structure of reality. So it was this idea that's so interesting. Okay.
And
And
so and the cosmic structure is cyclical,
yes,
right? And
correct.
so, that will bring me into, fast forwarding in, you wanna call it mythology of the Hindu or
Yeah.
Indian, whatever you wanna call it, when they, fast forward and start writing new stuff and, yogic philosophy and where chakras come from.
Mhm.
Because everything is cyclical. So, they describe in this story, the time before, and then the time before that, and the time
Yes,
before that. And so, destruction and end is not, a sign of bad. It's
for
the
sure.
sign of rebirth,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And so that's where it's everything is in a wheel, and that's what chakra is. Chakra means wheel,
Of
right?
course.
So everything is moving. Now, I wanna get
And we know
into
too, like Yeshua, when there were multiple years where we don't have accounts written, right, in the Bible, but there was a time when he was in Egypt, and there was a time when he was in India, and we
yes,
know that. So, like, he was studying this form of mastery and these teachings,
yes,
and, when we look back, so if you read Anna, grandmother of Jesus, she talks about him learning to walk on water in India. So isn't
yes.
it interesting that, if we look at water or the celestial waters as a representation of divine cosmic order, and we look at our greatest known, I'm going to say deity, Yeshua, being taught to walk on water, which represents memory as well, or the collective
Mhm.
cloud,
Yeah,
like that's a pretty significant form of mastery to be able
yeah,
to like exist on top of that, right? And does that mean that he mastered cosmic order or that he understood it, right?
yeah.
So I don't know, that's where my mind went.
No, for sure, it's when you're looking at it, water is also the symbol of, purification, right? We use
Yes.
water in all kinds of ritual baptisms,
Yes.
right? And so, if water is the purification and a flood coming upon the entire earth, is that
Awesome.
the purification of the earth,
Yeah,
right? Are
which
we
is cyclical,
baptizing the
which you say
entire
is
planet,
cyclical, right?
which
Yeah.
is cyclical?
Yeah. Huh.
Okay, so the yogic philosophy comes in later. Okay, so we have the Vedas, which are centuries older than biblical texts.
Mhm.
And then we move forward to them becoming elaborated upon and, branching out, and that's where we get, yogic and modern yogic philosophy, and from
Hmm.
there is where the chakra system comes in, because the chakras were never talked about in these much older Vedas.
Interesting.
Yes, so it's interesting that these come in later, but what doesn't, what they are kind of deriving them from is in the older Vedas, they talk about prana.
Ah.
And so prana is life force energy,
Hmm.
which
Also known as?
Reiki. So, this is where, the energy body kind of comes into play, and I think this is where they start to elaborate on the frequencies that they were manipulating or
Mm.
igniting, maybe manipulating isn't the right, maybe it's igniting through sound
Mm.
and chant, that this then comes into play because the chakras are a representation of where the prana, mm, the prana exists in, so chakra means wheel. The prana exists in a wheel of energy, and each of those are a different frequency. So like within the physical form, like if we're just talking about the physical human body, you have you have 116 chakras, but you have what's commonly known as the 7 main ones within the body. And so when you activate a certain frequency outside of the body, those chakras will resonate with those frequencies. And so you can bring those frequencies, those chakras, into alignment through sound, which is
Bingo.
super, super cool. And so the prana is existing in these. And then like the other thing is like there's a lot of talk about the micro and the macro. And so like everything, if you bring the physical form into like the human physical form into alignment, into where the prana is meant to be, then you harmonize that with the world around you. So if you bring enough people into alignment within their frequencies, you will bring the earth into alignment. So you could potentially avoid the flood, the reset, the purification by having enough people influencing the frequency of the earth by coming into this state of alignment.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And that's why, friends, it starts with you. Like you
Yeah, and
can't.
this is what I do in my program,
Yeah.
the Energetic Revival Alliance, which is a 9 chakra course, 11-week course, where you work through your 9 major chakras. So I just told you about your 7 within the body. There's more above, but there's one below called the Earth Star. And so in my program, we start at the Earth Star, and then we go up through the 7 within the physical form, and all the way up to the 9th above the physical form, above your head, which is called the Soul Star chakra. So we go into how these affect your life because they really do. Like it's really, really neat to do. I like this is I don't want to like totally go into my whole program here, but it is amazing. Like it really is. And I don't want to be like braggy about it or anything, but like I absolutely love guiding, and I only guide women through this because it's so beautiful for me to witness a woman come into her power and like come into her peace and come into like her sense of belonging in this world, being able to like let go of her anxiety, let go of her fear, and just like exist as she's meant to exist in her true state of prana, in her true dharma, which is the dharmas talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, which is your life purpose, which is why you're here. And so to like get to witness women like doing the work and then really noticing. And I just released last healing episode, an exercise that we do in the ERA where we go through and you learn to like connect with the body, which then connects you to the chakra, which then connects you to the root of your issues or not, like can also be very affirming. And so it's really just empowering to come into your sense of self and who you are and what you need, and to like no longer be affected by the external world where it's like, I am the source of power. I am the one that's connected to God. I bring in the energy of the divinity from above, the prana, the life force, the Reiki, and I get to establish coherence within myself. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, we can get into the chakras and like I can give you a brief overview. Those of you listening probably already have an understanding if you're here of the chakras. But so the Earth Star chakra is your connection to the Mother Earth. It's like also nicknamed the billionaire chakra. So this is about a foot beneath you into the ground. And so this is like your connection to abundance, right? Because if you think about the earth and herself, the earth is wholly abundant. You know, she has water, she has food, and like it is cosmic order, Rita, that she will be and always will provide. So when you're right in your root chakra, you're right in your ability to receive abundance and to create abundance in your life. So that's a feminine aspect. And then you go up into your root chakra, which is at the base of your spine at your seat. This is a masculine chakra or energy center, and it's connected to your safety in this world and essentially like your basic needs. Are you fed? Do you have shelter? Are you warm? Are you clean? Right? It's like it's very primal in your root, and this can affect so many people in their root the way that they were born. If they were born in trauma, like a cesarean section, your root chakra is likely fucked up. If you grew up in poverty, your root chakra is probably fucked up. And all of this to say, like, it can be fixed. And, like, that's what I do in the ER,
Totally.
right? Is,
Yep.
like, it just because it's and, like, this is, like, your very base, right? And the root chakra is often I see it so often in people that it's not activated, it's not working correctly.
Mhm.
And this is what we also do in Reiki too, right? Like, you get a Reiki treatment,
Absolute.
your Reiki practitioner's moving through your chakras, and they're going to help restore balance in there. And then you move up into your sacral, which is like your reproductive system in both men and women. And so wherever your reproductive organs are is where your sacral chakra generally sits. And just like your reproductive center physically creates life, in energetic, it is your source of creation. So this is where
Mhm.
power, pleasure, and creation come from. And so depending on the person, like this can be in or out of alignment. If you're like a very creative person, you're probably good there. If you experience pleasure easily, you're probably good here. But like if you're like, you can be overactive too, right? Like if you're a sex addict, if you're like
Mhm.
constantly seeking pleasure, like you're out of alignment. And then you go up into the solar plexus, which is your confidence or power center, which is another masculine center. And this is like how you take up space in the world. I always like to compare this to the sun, right? Like the
Mhm.
sun,
Mhm.
like I like to say, like you have a sun inside of you in your solar plexus. And so if you picture the sun, like we need it, right? The earth needs the sun.
We're powered by the sun.
However, if you're pale as I am, if you stay out in the sun too long at a certain time of day, the sun will burn you,
Mhm.
right? And so a power like that, while it's needed, also needs to be respected. Right? And so it's like there's a balance when you're coming online in your solar plexus of like ca giving too much, and giving
Mm.
not enough, and giving just the right amount where you provide warmth because those ideas, those creations that come in from the sacral, like you have to. It is your responsibility as the sun to show up and give light to the world.
Mhm.
Without your light, without your creations, that the world will suffer without that. So
Because we are in service.
we are in service, and so like a lot of people struggle with their solar plexus one way or another, in arrogance or in lack, right? Where
Yep.
it's like they're afraid to show up, or they're showing up way too much and they're burning a lot of people.
Mm.
And then you move up into the heart, which is another feminine, and I like to think of the heart as, like, is it like, the heart is the very center, and so this is, like, the
Mhm.
mergence of the above and below.
Yep.
So when you look at the chakras, the lower chakras, the physically lower chakras, those are a representation of the physical world,
Mhm.
right? Everything physical comes from the lower chakras. And then the higher chakras, physically higher, not in meaning or depth, are a representation of the etheric world. So this is where, like, in the heart is where these two etheric above and the physical below merge into one. And then when you
Mm.
get this mergence of the above and below, the divinity, right? You need balance. This is where love comes from, right? So, like,
Mm.
this is where relationships come from because in relationship, you need balance, right? You need give, you need take. You need to give love, you need to receive love. There's not like you can't be a martyr and only give, right? You
Yep.
have to be able to receive and ask for help too. And then you go up into the throat, and the throat is the Stephanie's expertise in, is your representation. So it's also a masculine center, but it's a representation of your communication, right?
Absolutely.
And communication also goes both ways, right? So it's not just speaking, but it's also listening and like
Got it.
hearing, like not just like being quiet enough for someone else to talk, but it's also like listening to what they're saying. Like, what is the message? And then your ability, once you receive a message, your ability to discern truth from fiction, right? So this also comes in at your throat. And so I think a lot of people in this world definitely need work on discernment.
Correct.
In their throat.
And listening and hearing.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of talking, but not as much listening.
And, like, understanding, like, to listen is to
Yes,
understand.
hearing, actually hearing.
Yeah,
Yes.
for
Yep.
sure.
Agreed.
And then you move up to the third eye, which is a feminine aspect, and the third eye is, like, your intuition, your access to your inner knowing. And so how I like to see this, or explain this to people is, like, it's your high self. And so your high self has lived many incarnations beyond this one. And so if you could access all of the wisdom that you have gained through all of the lifetimes that you've ever experienced, past, present, and future, you would be like, holy shit, I'm smart as fuck. And then you would learn to trust that inner wisdom, right? Because a lot of people will hear the intuition. They'll be like, "Yeah, need to slow down going through this intersection." But that's silly. Why would I do that? I'm not gonna listen. And then they don't listen, and then boom, they get hit by a car, right? But they heard it. So, like, lots of people will hear it and ignore it. They'll, like, chalk it up as, like,
True.
that voice is crazy. I don't know where that's coming from. So, yeah, in the ERA, we work on trusting your intuition. And then you move up to the crown. So we went from feminine. And so it goes back and forth from feminine, masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine, masculine, because we need balance of feminine and masculine. And so we work our way all the way up to the crown chakra, the top of the head. And this is your connection to God. Okay. Like, as simple as that. This is your connection to your higher power, what if you wanna call it God, the universe, divine, creator, source, whatever you wanna call it, but this is your direct line to the masculine knowing of what is right for you. That there is something, some sort of cosmic order that is going to take care of you, but what people forget about this is you have to ask. Like, people, like, they don't have this they're like, "What is your," when I ask people, "What's your relationship to God?" And they'll say, "Oh, I believe in God," or, "I don't believe in God." Right? And those that do believe, I'm like, "No, but I'm not asking if you believe in God or not, I'm asking about your connection. Do you talk to God? Do you listen to God's answers? Are you asking for help? Because if you don't ask, he doesn't know." So it is about, like, and, like, there's a lot of people who struggle with a relationship to God because of religious trauma, I guess you
Sure.
can call it,
Yep.
right? So it's like they shut that down, but, like, it's more than just a biblical God in the sky. It's like it's the source, right?
Well, and
And then you
going
move up. Go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you, just going to what you mentioned about the Vedic teachings, right? It's like if we don't sit in that space of meditation or
And silence.
empty that,
Yes.
like, let's say that the crown chakra is a Tupperware container and
Mhm.
it's full of rotten vegetables. If you don't take those rotten vegetables out and wash the Tupperware container, i.e., sit in meditation, then you
Yes.
can't receive you can't fill it up again, right? You
With good
can't get your
stuff.
messages. So exactly what you said, and that's what the Vedic teaching really
It
hammered home.
totally. It really is about sitting with God. It, like, and,
Mhm.
like, hearing where you're needed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Not where you wanna be, but where you're
Mhm.
needed to be, right? And letting God guide you. Because the more you let God guide you, the more you go where you're needed and not where you think you want to
Sure.
be, the more ease will come into your
Mhm.
life, right? So, yeah, and then in the ERA, we end up at the soul star chakra, which is your connection to your soul group.
Mm.
So, it's like it's about the Akashic records and about, the people that you're incarnated with now as well
Mm.
as you have been before. So, like, what's a really, like, interesting way to look at things is, like, you are physically incarnated right now, but your soul is also in the etheric. So it's like you're here physically, but you're also up there or out
Mhm.
there, right? And so, like, you're always present and then you always incarnate. Well, not always, but generally speaking, you often will incarnate with the same soul group. And so within the group before physical incarnation comes, you all like agree to teach one another lessons to further your growth in this cycle that of birth and death, right? So
Mhm.
to continue your growth as a soul, together you're like, okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to hurt you in this life so that you can learn forgiveness, right?
Mm.
And so, like, and then you all incarnate together in this group. And so you're also always, this group is always up in this ether. And so if you're like, what is going on? Why am I getting into the same stupid pattern with this family member where we're constantly every 2 years in this cycle of like fighting with each other and this and that and that? So you can access from your soul star chakra, you can access what's going on and like
Mm.
why this cycle is continuing to repeat so that you can make it make sense and then hopefully integrate that knowledge and into your life, into your physical life where you have access to what the soul contract was or what the lesson's meant to be. And then you can execute that lesson in the physical form. So yeah, the chakras come in, but they don't come in into Hinduism until later. They're
Mm.
more they're a newer concept, which I didn't know before starting this research.
Yeah. I didn't know that either, and the thing is, we know, like, Reiki came back to us in a certain time in this, like, iteration, but it's like, we know that it existed before then, it was called something different, so I'm sure these teachings, like, about the chakras, like, I'm sure they existed,
Mhm.
before, because we know that those things have always been around, but it's when they were starting to be written down and talked about and actually analyzed, right? That
Yeah,
we've started to call them that specifically and grateful. We're grateful for the teachings because it really sure makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and
Mm.
it's across all culture, right? The
Yeah.
prana, the chi, the life force energy, the
And can I
Holy
ask
Spirit.
a quick question? Just because
Yeah.
I've heard of prana also described as breath. And, like, when you
Mm.
think about it, I don't know if I'm incorrect in saying that. When you think about
Yeah.
it, the only way we live is if we breathe,
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's another translation or an alternate translation, but it's interesting because you can't sing or make any chant without having breath as a
Yeah.
fuel, right? So even thinking about, like, it in that terms of, like, life force energy, like, you literally can't live without breathing. So I don't know if I
Literally.
made that up
And if
one
you go
day
back to,
or
like, the biblical creation story of God breathing life into the
good point.
clay,
Good point.
right? Like,
Yeah.
the prana, the chi, it's
Yep.
and, like, when we do attunements,
Mhm.
the breath, like, there is
Yeah,
a
you're right.
breath that happens,
Yep,
and I
that's
won't
true.
give it away, but if you take your
Yep.
level 3, you'll know what the breath is in to give an attunement. Like, there's a
Yeah.
very relevant aspect of this is really, really interesting point to, like, dot to connect,
Yeah,
is that is the life force, is love, is all of this connected by breath?
I would say so.
Mhm.
And as a
This whole
singer,
time.
that's, like, pretty
Yeah,
damn cool
it is really
to
cool.
think of it
There
that
is
way.
no life without breath. The
It
life force
legit.
is the breath,
Yeah.
and to control the breath ooh, and then we gotta get a breathwork facilitator in our next series here.
I have one.
Perfect. We're gonna bring in one. But
Yeah.
yeah, okay, well, yeah, we've
Do you wanna
gone
mention the series, actually, before we
yeah,
hop
you
off?
do it.
Okay,
You're, like
sure.
you're on it.
Sure. I'm excited because in the fall, so not that far away, we're going to be starting a healing series. So we are going to be bringing on healers from multiple different forms of energy healing, ways of looking at healing, or ways of looking at specific modalities in an alternative and actually seeing them as healing modalities. That did not come out properly in the way that I wanted it to, but that's fine. So looking at things, let me say that again, that you may not consider a healing modality as a healing modality.
Yeah, they're not mainstream.
Yeah. But really looking at these different individuals as well and the beautiful modalities that they bring forward that might be new to you, and just really allowing ourselves to explore how vast healing is and how many things on this planet can be considered medicine that are not just what they've told you at the doctor. Because to me, that's not medicine, or parts of it can be, but we're really doing ourselves a disservice by ignoring all these other modalities, that some of which have changed my life and my health, and I'm sure some of which have changed Mel's health and life.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to bring forward some really cool guests to
Yeah.
have you meet them and ask them very poignant, life-changing questions. And also, they're all really lovely people, so you get to meet some really lovely people that we love
Yeah,
and hear from them.
that are in service. And like
Yeah, that are in service.
yeah, that is honestly what we're here. Like if you're looking at the Vedic stuff, it's like we are here to be in service. And so I think like the
Absolutely.
biggest takeaway from this whole episode is like let go of what you want,
Mm,
connect to the divinity above, below, within you. Realize that when you're in service to others, life will bring you ease. God will bring you ease.
mm.
And so empty the mind, empty it all, and just what can I do to help today?
That was beautifully said.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, friends. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe.
On Spotify and YouTube.
Yeah. And like engage. We love hearing from you in the comment section. So
Yes.
let us know, like, what kind of healing modalities would you like to learn about? Like, we're gonna have an
Yeah.
astrologer come, breath work. We're gonna
Animal
do
communicator.
ooh, yeah, wow. I would love to do, mm, I mean, I know, like, you do sound, but, like, having, like, another frequency sound healer
For
come on,
sure. For sure. We're gonna bring on a
crystal bowls.
homeopath as well.
Oh, yeah,
Also a
naturopath.
matrix repatterning therapist, which I bet many people have not heard of, but you will soon.
Yeah, I
So
have my
stay
friend
tuned.
too, she's been on before and way, way, way back Time Machine episodes before Steph
Mhm.
even came on as a guest
Well,
initially. And she does something called Best, which is like a energetic chiropractor kind of thing. So
cool.
yeah, it's really neat. So maybe I'll have her come back on and go into more depth with her. But yes,
Great.
okay, our friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of our journey into discovery, what all of this world means. So may peace be with you.
May peace be with you.